guys, so today we're going to talk about percent of a number, but in general, it's called percent proportion. So we have to know what a percent proportion is because it is a specific proportion that you set up when you're dealing with percentages. So we need to know what is a percent proportion. So a percent proportion is one ratio or fraction where it compares part of a quantity to a whole quantity. So percent proportion is one ratio or fraction that compares part of a quantity to a whole quantity. What I mean by that is all of your guys' tests and quizzes, when you get them back, you get a fraction on it. That fraction tells you part of a whole. So if you get an 8 out of 10 on a quiz, you got 8 right out of the 10 whole possible points. That's part of a whole. I could do it with like an apple too. There are 8 slices of an apple. I've eaten 2 of them. I have 6 left. There are 6 slices of an apple out of 8 slices of that whole apple. Does that make sense, guys? So that's what it means by part of a whole. So when we set it up, we always set up part over whole. Because your part is almost always smaller than your whole. There are a few cases where obviously your part can be bigger than your whole, but that doesn't happen as frequently. So part over whole. Well, when I get an 8 out of 10 on a test, that's my part is 8, my whole is 10, and I want to know what my percentage is. How did I teach you guys to find that percent? You either multiplied it or you divided it, right, guys? Okay? The other way is that this fraction right here, this ratio right here, when I'm setting up a proportion, can be equal to another ratio. And it's going to be equal to whatever the percentage of that part in whole is. So if it's 8/10, if I got 8 out of 10 on a quiz, what's that percentage? 80. And what we always put percentages over, you guys. So what do you think I put that percent under that percentage sign? 100. Because whatever your part of your whole is going to be equal to that percentage over a 100. So if you got an 8 out of 10 on a quiz, my part is 8, my whole is 10, that equals the 80% over 100. Does that make sense, guys? Mm-hmm. Questions on that at all? Okay, I'm going to make it a little easier in terms of wording. If you can remember this phrase that I give you, it will help you set it up. So we say is over of, everyone say that out loud for me, equals percent over 100. Memorize that and it makes percent proportion so much easier. Okay, and I'm going to explain why right here. So here's our first example, example 1. You will get an example that looks like this, or a problem that looks like this. What number is 40% of 120? So I will get a problem that states what number is 40% of 120. I want to use the proportion is over of equals percent over 100. And I'm going to use that because those words will help me figure out where the numbers go. Okay, when I set this up, I always set it up with line equals line because I know that it's one ratio equal to another ratio. It's got to be 2 ratios equal to one another, then one of my numbers is never, ever, ever going to change. What number never, ever, ever changes? 100. So always write your 100 down. That number never changes. Its placement never changes. That 100 will always remain the same. Is there any questions on that? Next thing I tell you to do is figure out the percentage. Does this problem give me a percentage? What is it? It's written 40%. It says 40%. So if it gives me a percentage, I'm going to write that number in my percent spot. So where does it go? It goes above the 100. Because our percentage is 40%, I write that 40 over 100. Questions on that, you guys? Okay. What if they don't give you a percentage? What do you think you put there? You'd put a variable. You're going to put an X there. If they don't give it to you, you put a variable there, okay? Then you go to whatever the next number is that they give you. What's the next number they give us? Gives you 120. And what word do you notice is right in front of the 120? So if it says of 120, do you think 120 goes on top or on bottom? Why? Because it is over of. Of is on bottom, 120 goes on bottom. Does that make sense, guys? And then what goes on top of 120? An X. Because this is where I am looking for what number is. I don't know what number is. That is what I'm trying to find. Does that make sense, guys? Here is where, honestly, you guys can probably do this one off the top of your head without a calculator, but here is where you may grab a calculator if you do not have your calculator out. So everyone grab that for me, please. Okay. All right, let's solve it like we solve a proportion. What do I do first, everyone? 120 times 40. I can do that in my head. But you can use your calculator to make sure and double check that you got it right. What's 120 times 40, you guys? 4,800. What do I do? I do x times 100. What's x times 100? 100x. So I have 100x equals 4,800. What do I do now, you guys? Once again, this is another one that you should be able to do without using a calculator, but your calculator is there to help you. Double check you got it right. What does x equal, everyone? What is it, everyone? 48. So your answer is 48. If you get a 48 out of 120, you got a 40%. Questions on that, you guys? Okay, what if I gave you this example, example 2? What percent of 15 is 9? What percent of 15 is 9? Now, I still want to use my is over of equals percent over 100. So I'm still writing two ratios that are equal to one another. What's the first number I should always write down? 100. Always write that number down. It's never changing, so write it down. Next number figure out is your percentage. Do they give me a percentage in this problem? No, so what do I put there? When it says what percent, they don't give it to you, which means you want to find it. So I'm trying to find my percent. What's the first number they give us? And what word is right in front of the 15? So it's of 15, so does 15 go in my numerator or does 15 go in my denominator? Very good. It goes in my denominator. And what's the last word? And it is what? Where's that 9 go? On top of that 15. Now we can cross cancel. Or cross cancel. Cross multiply. What are we cross multiplying? 9 times 100 and 15 times x. What do I get when I cross cancel? What should it read? 15x equals 900 or 900 equals 15x. I don't care which way you write it. What do I do now? And x equals what, you guys? What was it, everyone? 60. Now, question. My answer is not 60. 60%. Do not forget that percent sign, because if you forget that percent sign, are you right or wrong? Because it is not a percent without that percent sign. So please don't forget that percent sign. But also, don't add a percent sign if they don't want a percentage, because that would also be wrong. Does that make sense? So be really, really careful. Questions so far, guys? All right, we got one more example for our notebook. Example 3. 18 is 25% of what number? $18 is 25% of what number? So same thing. Is over of equals percent over 100. So I have my two ratios equal one another. What number is the first number I should write? Find your percentage. What is my percentage? It says 25%. Where does 25% go? Goes over that 100 because percentages always go over 100. What's the last number they give you? And what word goes with 18? So does 18 go on top or does 18 go on bottom? 18 goes on top. So what goes on bottom, you guys? Because they're asking you for of what number we don't know of, our variable goes in the other spot. And then you solve it like you solve a proportion. You cross multiply. What should that problem say when I cross multiply? $25x equals 1,800, 25x equals 1,800, or you could flip-flop them around. That's totally fine. What do I do now? What do I do? Divide by what? So what does x equal? X equals? Do I put a percentage on that one? No, because I'm not asking for the percent. Those are the 3 types of problems that you would see because 100 never changes, right? So we did an x in every single spot. Do I have any questions on that? Any questions at all?